Hi guys, today we're going to do a brief 1-point perspective practice sketch. I know some of you have already been introduced to 1-point perspective. You kind of reminded me of that you did some middle school projects. So for some of you, it's going to be a review. For others of you, this might be something new. Either way, give it a try and try your best with the 1-point perspective. And then later this week, we're going to move to 2-point, okay? All right, so the first thing you need is a piece of paper. I have graph paper, but just purely because that's just what I just had a pack of it. So use whatever kind of paper you can find, okay? I would suggest you use pencil, but if you can't find a pencil, just do what you can, all right? Because when we do perspective, you will be doing some erasing. And so you just wanna make sure that you'll be able to erase. I'm gonna use marker today, just like I did in the Google Slides presentation, just so you can see better what I'm doing, all right? All right, so the first thing you need to get is a straight edge. And it doesn't matter if it's a ruler, it doesn't matter if it's the straight edge of a book or a straight edge of a clipboard, because we're not doing any actual measurement today. It's more of a straight edge so that we can get, we're just trying to get straight lines, okay? All right, so the first thing you want to do is get your ruler and a pencil, and we need to put a horizon line. Anytime we're talking about perspective, and remember we talked about perspective is another way to create that illusion of depth on a 2D surface, all right? And so perspective is a little bit more of some tighter rules in order to do that. And so when we're drawing in perspective, we need to put the horizon line in. And remember we said that the horizon line lets us know, it's kind of like where the earth and the sky meet. So anything above the horizon line theoretically is floating in air, and anything that's below the horizon line should be touching the ground, is kind of how it works. We'll talk about that a little bit more later this week, but for now, let's go ahead and put a horizon line in. It does not need to be perfectly in the center of your paper. It can be a little up or a little down. It doesn't matter as long as you just get that straight horizontal in. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw. And I have graph paper, so it makes it a little easier for me to. All right. The next step is to put a vanishing point in. And a vanishing point is essentially what it's called. It's that point where you can no longer see the objects, where your eye is done. And so it's basically where everything starts to vanish. Same thing for today. We're just gonna kind of center that vanishing point, but later this week we'll talk about moving the vanishing point somewhere on the horizon. So go ahead and put a vanishing point in. It does not need to be exactly in the center. So don't worry about trying to measure it perfectly in there. Just get it in there, okay? And I'm going to put mine right here. I'm going to make mine extra big so you can see it. You don't really necessarily need to make yours that big, okay? All right, next step. We need to draw a shape. So we're going to take our ruler or your straight edge, whatever you're working with, and you're going to pick a spot and you're going to draw a shape. I'm going to do a square just to show you real quick. And it doesn't matter how big, you don't want to make it too big because then it's going to make trying to draw these vanishing points a little tricky. But just going to get that in there. It's not going to be very perfect because my easel's moving on me. All right, so I have a shape. Now what I want to do is I want to turn that shape into a form. I want to create this 3D object that has some perspective to it. So what I'm going to do next, and I'm going to switch to a red. Anything I draw in red is meant to be erased later, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my ruler with the vanishing point. And anywhere I move my ruler that touches an edge of that shape, I'm going to draw a line back to the vanishing point. So I have one there. And then I'm going to line up to the dot, and I'm going to move that a little bit. Whoops, sorry, I can't see my dot anymore. And I have a second. Okay, these are called converging parallel lines. That was one of your vocab words. So we all know that if we were looking at an actual cube and it was an actual cube, these lines would be parallel. That means they would run alongside each other and theoretically never touch. But we're trying to create 1-point perspective. So these parallels are actually converging as they move towards the vanishing point. All right, so it's creating that illusion of depth. All right, and I have one more to draw. So I line up there. Now, we have one more corner to that square. And if we look at it, if I were to draw the red line, it's just going to go straight through my square. And that wouldn't, we don't want to see that. We're just trying to draw the sides of the cube. So we're not going to draw that any. So anytime that you line up the vanishing point and it actually would dissect or bisect whatever your shape, don't draw it, okay? All right, now the next step is to come in and draw the edges of my cube. And you don't need to, you don't need to precisely measure. I mean, if we were doing this, if we were an architect, you would have to, do some precise measurement and use some special tools. But for our purposes today, I really just want you to kind of understand 1-point perspective. So what I'm going to do is I kind of line up my ruler, the edge of my ruler with the edge of the square, and I just kind of move it up to where I would like the edge of my cube to be, and I'm going to draw a parallel line. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to line it up, and my clip is kind of in the way. It moved on me. Parallel line, okay? Then what I would do is I'm going to trace these because those are keepers. And then all those red lines you'll erase, okay? So I want you to do 8 of these shapes. I don't care if you do the same shapes. I don't care if you do 4 geometric and 4 organic, but I would like you to try to do 8. And I know this one only has 4, but this was just my example. And doing the same thing. So each time you draw your shape, you line up the edge to the vanishing point, okay? Then you create the sides using parallel lines. So you can see here I drew parallel. When you do an organic shape, it gets a little trickier to try to match those curves, but try your best, okay? Remember, everything I drew in red can be erased. You can also, when you're done, erase the horizon line and the vanishing point. We don't really need those for today. And then the last thing I want you to do is I want you to think about everything we've talked about with adding value and creating depth with value. So you can see here, I went in with my pencil and I added some value. So with the geometric shapes, it's pretty easy because you just have to pick a side, like each side is one value, like darkest dark or lightest light. But when we're doing these more curved type shapes, you kind of have to, just like we talked about, you have to add value with the contour line. So you can see here, I added value where the shadow would kind of be laying in. And then as it curves up towards the light source, it's lighter. And then as we go back, curve away from the light source, it's darker. So I'm shading with the contour line, okay? So give that a try. Try your best. And that's our lesson on 1-point perspective. Okay, thanks.